He's the master of fright and a demon of light, and he'll scare you right out of your pants. But not yet. Andreas Deja is very well known for his trilogy of villains, aka Gaston, Jafar, and Scar. But what happened before the evil? What spurred the animator to turn to a life of animating crime? Sit back and relax, and let's explore Deja's villain arc. Before we start, don't forget to check out our Discord, our coffee page, and like, subscribe, comment, hit the bell, all the things. It really helps us out. Andreas Deja was born on April 1st, 1957 in Gdansk, Poland. That's right, the most evil of all days, April Fools. He later moved to Dinslaken, Germany, when he was a year old. Living in a lower middle-class family in the middle of nowhere, Germany, he found himself growing up to be fascinated by the idea of drawing.
I enjoyed drawing. I remember ever since kindergarten. I drew in kindergarten, and even comic characters, copied comics and stuff like that. So the drawing part started early on at 5 or something like that. And then, but it wasn't really until Jungle Book where I said, this is it. This is what I want to do. And everybody else went like, yeah, you're crazy. Basically, I couldn't quite believe what I saw, how this was even possible, that these are obviously drawings that are moving, but they're also real. And they seem to be completely alive. And these characters had relationship, and they made you feel good, they made you feel sad, go through all these emotions, but they were still drawings, and how is that even possible? I'd never seen a Disney movie in a theater. I've only seen clips of Disney movies on our black and white TV, and then all of a sudden there you are in that little German theater, and the Jungle Book comes on, and it just changes your life. And I wanted to see it again and again and again. My mom got worried, and she says, "You want money again to see this movie again? You just saw it." And I said, yeah, I don't know, I just want to see it again.
This newfound art intrigued him so much that he made it his life goal to learn everything he could about animation. And what better place to do that than where some of the most talented animators on the planet currently worked? DreamWorks. Sorry, that's my other channel. Disney.
I thought, I really need to write to Walt Disney Studios, and find out, if they need more people, or maybe how I can train myself here in Germany as a kid. Maybe they can recommend some art school or something like that. Anyway, so with the help of my English teacher, I put together a letter with specific questions. Basically, what advice do you have, you Disney Studios, for me as a kid in Germany, and what I can do here to maybe sometime work for you guys over there. So wouldn't you know, it took about 2 or 3 weeks, and I get this letter in the mail, and the logo on the left was that famous Mickey.
Oh, man.
Walt Disney Productions, when it was still called Walt Disney Productions. I mean, it was just, I couldn't even believe it, and then, because then it becomes tangible. It wasn't just this faraway exotic place, overseas, that seems so abstract. And, it was real because they sent me a letter. So I opened it, of course, and it was really, really cool because they pointed out that if I am serious about animation the way they do it at Disney, they said, please don't send us any of your cartoon work. So don't send us any of your drawings of Mickey Mouse and Pluto, because we can teach you that kind of work here at the studio later. They said, what you need to do first is you need to become an artist on your own right. We want to see how you draw and how you see the world. So they said, go to an art school, take some evening classes if you can, learn to draw animals, go to the zoo and fill up sketchbooks and with all kinds of animals, and not just once or twice, but do this regularly, often. And they said, when you're a little bit older, you need to enroll into life drawing classes, because as a Disney animator, you have to know the human figure and how the human figure functions and works, the bones, the muscles and all that. So you need to do all that. And I just took that really seriously, because I was driven, man. I went to the zoos, all the zoos around my town, within 100 miles, took trains. So it was Cologne, Düsseldorf, Hamburg, And those are big zoos. And just sketched my heart out and started life drawing early as far as my parents were concerned. I think I was about 14. And
looking at naked people at 14.
Exactly. And my father, when I brought the first drawings home, he said, so, I mean, my parents have no idea about art and art training and any of that. So my dad looked at these big drawings and he said, so how did this work? Did you guys work from photographs or something? And I said, no, there was actually a person there who we draw. So they were shocked. And then I said, why don't you talk to my art teacher at school, who they knew, and then he can explain that this is important in the development of an artist, that you need to know life drawing. So they talked to him, and he said in Andreas's case, it's okay. He's young, but he's also advanced in terms of his drawing, so it's all good. I thought, what you're going to do is you're going to try. You're really going to try to make it happen, but it probably won't work. Because Disney is on such a high level. This is who they are, you know. I mean, come on, don't kid yourself. But somehow, you had this sort of, I guess, passion or instinct where you want to give it your best shot anyway. So work all those years. But also, it was really fun. It wasn't just like, oh, I have to do this portfolio. I have to go to the zoo. I loved that. Mm-hmm. And loved seeing yourself getting better. Later on, I bought some Super 8 clips from Disney movies, and had a little screener, and I could study things frame by frame, and that opened up a whole new world of studying. Yeah, it was exciting. I loved doing all that because I thought all this might lead to a job at Disney. Right. Maybe. Right. Later on, I think I was about 18. I took a trip to London because I had heard of Richard Williams Studios and them doing these commercials, these animated commercials. So once I got there, they showed me some pencil tests of these commercials. And then it became all clear that's where the stuff is. This is really all you need, is just doing pencil tests. So then I went back home and did pencil tests and shot them on my Super 8.
Did you actually go to school for animation or an art college or something like that?
What it was, I had met Hans Bacher, famous art director, color designer extraordinaire.
German, right?
Yeah, German. Mm-hmm. I met him when I was about 16. And because in my life drawing class, which was part of an art school, they said, the art teacher there said, you're so crazy about Disney. And he was just rolling his eyes. He did not like Disney at all. But he says, I just had a student graduating from our program, and he's also mad about animation. You should really hook up with him. And he felt kind of sorry for both of us, And so he gave me Hans's phone number, and we hooked up and became friends. And so I thought, well, I'm just going to go to the same school that you went to then. Mm-hmm. But he did warn me. He said there's no animation course, but they really focus on life drawing, illustration. And I said, well, that's what the studio at Disney just told me, to focus on drawing. So I went there for 4 years. And it was a very interesting school because even though they didn't have animation classes in those days, but they had a focus on drawing, illustration, art history a little bit. But the school was kind of fun. It was structured a little bit like the California Institute of the Arts. Mm-hmm. Here in terms of that they represented all of the arts. So they had dance, they had painting, they had singing, they had graphics, acting, all the arts in one old monastery. It was an old monastery that was converted into an art school. There was a lake right next door. It was beautiful. I was in my fourth year. I remember I read a book written by John Canemaker. I don't know if you know who that is. John Canemaker has written a lot of books on Disney history, on Disney story artists, on Fantasia, and on special effects. And anyway, and he also teaches at NYU. But John Canemaker had put out a book on the making of a specific movie, and that movie was called Raggedy Ann and Andy, directed by Richard Williams. So it was all about that film and how it was made. And there was one little chapter toward the end about Disney, and it was talking about a animation training program that they have now, and we're talking late 1970s. Mm-hmm. And there was a picture of Eric Larson and Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnston in front of the animation building, crossing their arms, kind of showing like this is where we live. And I just had to find out. But this chapter also mentioned that Eric Larson, one of the great Disney animators, was the head of this animation program, this training program. So I wrote a specific letter to Eric Larson, again with questions. What is it looking like now? Do you need people? What can I do to apply and all that. And I had the nicest exchange of letters with Eric Larson, one of the greatest animators of all time. Yeah, he wrote back and he answered those questions. And then in the end, I had the courage to copy some of my work, some of my life drawings, some of my animal drawings, illustrations. I just copied them on large size paper and just send it over to him. And I expected like an avalanche of notes and critiques and all of that. And instead, what I got back was another letter from Eric on Jungle Book stationery. I still have that letter, of course.
Oh.
And he thanked me. Basically, he was impressed with my analysis of the human figure and animals, and he was sort of kind of complimentary about my work. And then at the end of this letter, he says, "I think you've got what it takes to make it work for you." So I just about fainted.
In August 1980, Andreas Deja moved to America and started at the training program at the Disney studio. As you can imagine, he was astounded at realizing his dream.
And to go to work and sit there and do your tests, and all that, and then knowing that Frank and Ollie are upstairs working on a big book, it was crazy, And not only that, you could actually go up during break time and knock on Frank and Ollie's door, and they would talk to you, and you could spend a half an hour with them, and it was just so awesome.
Immediately, Deja's entrance portfolio was getting unanimous praise, and all over the studio, he was dubbed a future all-time great, which is what they said about me when I started voicing these videos. We are so similar. Me and Andreas started the same day, and I remember seeing his portfolio and saying to myself, there's no way I could ever possibly be that good, reflects great animator Barry Temple. I thought everybody's portfolio was that good, but soon learned it was an exception. Even uptight members from the old guard, such as Ed Hansen and Joe Hale, were intrigued by his drawings.
And what they were saying to me is like, "Hey, Andreas, we don't need you on The Fox and the Hound. We are finishing that right now. There's just like maybe 2 or 3 months left finishing that up, but we're almost done. We need you on the next one, and that's the Black Cauldron." And I kind of knew that because I had read about that in some Life magazine article. I remember that Disney was going to do this project called the Black Cauldron based on Lloyd Alexander's books. So when I was still in Germany finishing school, I bought those books because I wanted to read them and see what kind of movie they would be making. So it was this big sword and sorcery kind of a theme. And I just started kind of drawing the characters the way I would imagine them, kind of closing my eyes after having read the books, and said, well, Taran the pig keeper could look like this, and the princess could look like that, and the magical pig and when look like that. So I did a whole stack of drawings. And when Disney hired me and I went over there, I took those drawings with me and I said, by the way, I know you're going to start on this movie, but I just gave it a little bit of thought. What do you think? And I remember the manager, Ed Hansen, looking at me saying like, can we buy those from you?
That's the best.
It's a true story. It really happened, and I said, well, yes, and just the fact that they thought these are good enough to give them a jump start in that direction, was amazing to me. And then Ed Hansen told me, we want you to do more. So they said, here's the deal. We're going to get you an office, and you're going to share that with another young student. He actually graduated from an art school here in California from Cal Arts. And his drawing style is very different than yours because you draw very Disney and dimensional and with a lot of appeal. But Tim's style is a little crazy, a little eccentric. And we think maybe if the two of you work in one office, you can come up with a new style for this film, The Black Cauldron. So that other person was Tim Burton. And
Whoa!
So they put me with Tim Burton for a whole year.
Wow.
I worked with him for a year, just filling up storyboards and character concepts and things like that we worked on. But, I couldn't really take Tim's drawings and change them because it just lost it. You had to do it his way or not his way, And so in the end, they decided just to do it the Disney way, the conventional house style.
On Cauldron, Deja had to animate over 1,000 feet of footage. Imagine, that's like 500 people, or like 3.5 millipedes. Oh wait, I'm confusing that with footage of 1,000 feet. Deja's 1,000 feet of footage, primarily animating Taran and Princess Ilanwi and the Old Man and some of the witches. An all-star cast, really.
After that 1 year doing design work on the Black Cauldron, I started to animate and stayed on that one for at least another 2.5 years or so. I mean, when you watch the Black Cauldron, at least when I watch it, I see so much inexperience in that film, inexperience in storytelling, inexperience in animation. The characters don't have enough weight, inexperience in good drawing. So it really is on the screen, even though some people don't really notice that, but I do. And the way I look at it, I got all my mistakes, not all my mistakes, but my worst mistakes out of the way in terms of doing animation. But that led me to better things afterwards.
The one thing I want to say about the Black Cauldron is, I mean, however it turned out, it really, just by the sheer nature of animating a lot during those early years, that by the end of the movie, I thought, wait a minute, I think I'm starting to learn how to walk here. I wasn't too frightened of this blank sheet of paper anymore, you know, and you had a little system down in terms of thumbnailing, you know. So I gained some experience on that, at least.
Right.
You know, so it was my venue really into.
So you kind of transitioned from doing the development and story stuff, and you just went into animation when they went into production, and
that's right. It was basically they threw you in the water and saw if you could swim.
Mm-hmm.
Is what it was, and did a lot of bad animation. Horrible.
I was going to ask, how do you feel about your earlier?
Well, it's horrible. It's absolutely horrible.
I think everyone at least should feel that way about their old stuff. You know, if you don't, you got a problem.
Then I think you're really in trouble. Yeah, you need to. Yeah, I mean, I think there was a lot of sort of copying Frank and Ollie or Milt. What would they have done kind of things?
Yeah.
Copying a certain technique rather than thinking about the character and bringing yourself into it. That all came years later.
For a lot of people, it's a great way to learn. Just emulate until,
yeah.
It's like copying drawings until you know how to draw.
Yeah. No, copying is actually a good thing to a point, and
Yeah.
then it can be a trap, and for some artists it has been a trap. Because that, obviously there comes a time where you have to say, okay, this is now about me and what I have to say.
Yeah.
But not that many artists do that, It's easy to have a technique, whether you're a musician or a dancer or an animator, it's so easy to hide behind that technique.
After finishing his duties on the Black Cauldron, Andreas Deja contributed a little to The Great Mouse Detective by animating the Queen in the film, which shows great sculptural, three-dimensional drawing and understanding of movement. Plus, that movie is dope as heck. After that, he worked with the late Pete Young on developing and designing characters for Oliver and Company. Young was a very underrated and promising storyman who tragically passed away from asthma. His death and the fact that the tone of the story moved from sincere and touching to more hip meant Andreas didn't feel the same enthusiasm for the project. I get it. I can't do hip-hop either, Andreas. At the same time, the studio was dealing with a lot of politics, making Deja feel a little uneasy. This ultimately made him decide to take the opportunity to work with his friend Dick Williams in London on the animation of Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
There are moments or times where you think like, boy, I think I learned a lot on this one. I think I opened up a new drawer, basically. Always looking for new drawers to open. And one was Roger Rabbit. And that was the best thing that I could have done at the time when Richard Williams asked me to come on and go to London and help out. I wasn't quite sure at the beginning because I had just gone to America and I didn't want to go back to Europe. And I don't know, I didn't think too highly of it. But then I did go, and working with European artists and also drawing in this crazy 40s style, and doing crazy scenes where you could really apply animation principles in a broad way, in a broad sense, just completely loosened me up. Because it wasn't about the Milt Kahl style anymore, or what Frank and Ollie would have done. That all was out,
Right.
It was about Tex Avery studying Clampett, that sort of thing. And we had a blast on that thing. And sometimes it was a little difficult to plug in your animated character with a live action. Technically, it was a little challenging, but boy, in terms of animating, you could really go to town and do some broad stuff,
Yeah.
which I think is good for any animator to go through before you narrow it down to some subtle acting. So it was just after that movie, I felt like I'm ready. I can do stuff now.
We surprised ourselves because after I had signed on to go there and be part of that movie, I remember thinking on the plane flying over there, now wait a minute, you've never done this before. You don't even know how this works. I mean, I knew from reading about combining live action with animation that they have to film the live action first. I knew that, like they did in Mary Poppins and South. You film the live action first, and then the actors imagine talking to an animated character, and they show the actor how high the character is in the scene, so there's something to focus on. So I knew about that, but how to match the drawing to the live action, I really didn't know. And I said, I guess I'd have to learn on the spot. And well, we all did. So this is how it went. I land at Heathrow, and there was a car picking me up. Nice. And I thought it's going to take me to my apartment where I would be staying. It didn't. It took me straight to the studio.
Oh.
It was still working hours. And I put my suitcase in a corner, and Richard Williams, the animation director, comes in and says, here's your first scene. Here are the photo stats, all the photographs from the live action. Here's the exposure sheet. Go. And the scene was the ostrich from Fantasia going up to Maroon's office. It was going upstairs. Bob Hoskins, the actor, Eddie, came out of the office, and they exchange a glance. They look at each other, and then before the ostrich goes into the studio, I thought there could be this little attitude, So I have the ostrich look at Bob Hoskins, just go, and just kind of walk in, like a little starlet attitude. And so yeah, I did the drawings based on all these photographs of the live action, and it worked out. And we tested it, with those live action photographs to make sure that it matches. But then the big moment came when we sent all the elements, our animation, the live action, the special effects, and we sent all of these elements to ILM back in California, and they would sandwich that together and work on the final exposures and add the shadows and all of that. And then they sent us the finished scene in color back. And when we saw that, I was just like, is that what the whole film is going to look like? This is amazing. Because the character looked like it's in the movie. It's not just drawn on, it's in the movie, because the character causes a real shadow on the ground, on the live action ground. And it was just crazy. It was just a great moment to see of what kind of a quality film we are making here. I had this big little sequence where Bob Hoskins comes back into his office, and he pulls the bed down, and Roger's in the bed already.
Right.
There's this big take, they scream at each other.
Right.
And then you have that long scene where Hoskins is standing on the left side of the screen, Roger on the right, and they argue back and forth, and the camera goes in ever so slowly. Roger jumps on the bed, and they keep arguing, right? Mm-hmm. And that bed sheet on that bed was complete white. So I had nothing to register Roger's feet to, and the camera was moving in. So the feet and the character had to grow slowly. Had they had a blanket there with stripes or a pattern, then you could base it on that and plant the feet on that pattern. There was nothing there, So I talked to Richard Williams, I remember, I said, I can't figure this out, this is not going to work, And he said, well, the feet are going to be an issue in this scene, but maybe you don't have to have them stand still, and you see the mistakes maybe coming up. Maybe have him do these little steps.
I was just thinking,
lift
I
the
remember
legs
that, yeah.
and add, so that's why he's doing this little dance almost, for no reason.
Right.
But it was just that
solving
kind
a
of
problem.
scene. Yeah,
and
exactly.
Thank goodness for his personality, because it worked.
And the other thing in that scene also that happened, these puppeteers that we had who would hold these mechanical arms, that they were holding a live action glass that we had to draw over. They were getting sometimes a little bit too involved with their mechanics. And I remember at one point, Roger Rabbit was supposed to lean against that bed as he's talking to Hoskins.
Oh, yes.
And there's a little suction happening on the bed where his hands would go. It's not really necessary because his hands are not that heavy that it would cause the bed to bend. But it was there, and I missed it.
Oh.
I missed it. I was so involved in the acting and what he was doing. And now when you look at the scene, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, these 2 points in the bed just go zzz, and hold there for a few seconds and then come back because I'd forgotten about it.
In the film, Andreas worked as a supervising animator and got to animate on almost all the characters, except Jessica Rabbit. Dang, what a shame. He also did a lot of the Disney cameos, not only the aforementioned Fantasia ostrich and hippo, but also the gorilla baller at the Ink and Paint Club.
Nice monkey suit.
A phenomenal example of Deja's vastly improved animation is in the scene where Hoskins hides Roger in the sink, and Smartass and the Weasels come in looking for something suspicious. Deja animated both Smartass and Roger.
As for you, Valiant, step out of line and we'll hang you and your laundry out to dry. Come on, boys. Let's spread.
They're gone.
Gee, Pathetti, I was thrilled. You saved my life. How can I ever repay you?
After the production of Roger Rabbit was finished at the Richard Williams studio, Andreas Deja returned to the studio in Glendale to join the production of Little Mermaid as a supervising animator. Because, darling, it's better down where it's wetter. Originally, Deja was intended to supervise the animation of Eric the Prince because of his skill at drawing the figure and draftsmanship, but instead replaced Ruben Aquino as the supervising animator on Triton, Ariel's father. And Aquino was cast out to sea. What's that? Oh, he was transferred over to Ursula, the villain.
Based on my own dad.
Oh, really?
In terms of his acting, not so much. Even though my dad was also, he had big arms and he was a worker, he had big hands. And again, you know, when my sister started dating when she was 16 or something like that, and she would come back late from the disco, my dad would wait up and just yell and let her have it. He wouldn't really hit her, but he would get really close and say, "Don't you do this again, you said 10 o'clock and now," all that kind of stuff. And when Triton...
But you always see the love.
Exactly.
You always see the love.
And I animated King Triton really more as a father than the ruler of the ocean. Mm-hmm. For him, it was just more important to me that he shows his father's side more often, or more. I mean, we all know he's the ruler, but you know, he feels a certain way about his daughter, like my own father did to my sister way back.
But Dad,
Is it true you rescued a human from drowning?
Daddy, I had to.
Contact between the human world and the mer world is strictly forbidden. Ariel, you know that. Everyone knows that.
He would have died.
One less human to worry about.
Instead of going on to the Rescuers Down Under like most of the Disney animators did after Mermaid, he decided to go his own way, forge a new path, take the road less traveled, journey onward, etc., etc. And so the animator was farmed out to Bear Animation, where he was a supervising animator on The Prince and the Pauper. He did some very believable, subtle animation of Mickey Mouse.
But then there are bits, like there's one scene in Prince and the Pauper where I thought if I would show any Mickey scene that I've ever done to Frank and Ollie, it would be that one. It's the one where he's seeing his reflection in the castle grounds. He's getting up and he's just doing a little dance with his own mirror image, and then he loses his step and then bangs into some armor. And I think that's the best Mickey scene that I've ever done. Mm-hmm. That really feels real,
right?
The way I analyzed it. So that one holds up.
Wow. Hiya. I'm just a little guy. Give me.
And there we have it. Andreas is all set up to enter his murderous roles. What brought him here? What mind could be capable of animating such evil? The mind of a top-tier animator whose quest to seek knowledge in animation, coupled with his dedication and love for the craft, led him to not only realize his childhood dream, but also to excel and rise to the top extremely quickly. Stay tuned for more Andreas as we look into his villain trilogy, or else. Thank you to these people for supporting us on Patreon and Ko-fi. And if you want to make sure this channel sticks around, you can check out our Ko-fi link in the description. Every bit helps. Thank you for watching this episode of Discographies. Click the thumbs up button below if you liked it. And if you want to be notified when the next episode comes out, consider subscribing and hitting the bell. Comment below with characters you would like to see us cover. Further reading and references are linked below. We hope to see you in another Discography.